Hello Internet. This is the first episode in a series about countries and their history. You could probably find most of this stuff online, but you're not going to do that, so here's this. I have a theme song for the series. That's all I've got so far. This first episode is about Finland, because why not Finland? Here's a picture of Finland. Sweden to one side and Russia to the other. Helsinki near the bottom somewhere. You can see it probably. And that location pretty much sums up the history of Finland. Finland was essentially a battleground between Sweden and Russia to decide who owned Finland. If you want an analogy, imagine two people smashing up a bed to decide who can sleep. So Finnish history is essentially split into two parts, the part where Sweden owned them and the part where Russia owned them, with a cheeky overlap in the middle. So the first people settled in Finland around 8000 BC, immigrating from Russia and Estonia. They hunted elk and beaver and spread throughout the region. However, as often happens in history, people aren't really sure when the first people arrived. Some tools have been found dating back to around 100,000 BC, so yeah. There were initially nomadic tribes in Finland, but it's thought that other tribes forced them north somewhere. In the Kalevala, which is a compilation of Finnish folklore split into 23,795 verses, it talks about the conflicts between the nomads and the other settlers. The two main tribes at the time were the Hammonites in the west and the Karelites in the east, and these guys loved nothing more than killing each other. This leads us on to the beginning of the Swedish period. So the story goes that in 1155, the Swedish king ordered an Englishman called Bishop Henry to go to Finland. Their plan was simple: forcibly baptise everyone, then colonise Finland, which you can imagine some of the Finnish locals found to be a bit of a bother. One day, a peasant called Lally came home to his wife. She told him the bishop had paid them a visit, had a nice eat and a drink, and left without paying. Lally had had just about enough of this guy, so he took his axe and decapitated him. Now bear in mind this is a legend that's changed over time. After decapitating the bishop, Lally put on his rings and clothes and they began to fuse to him. He tried to remove them and they ripped off his scalp and fingers. And then he also drowns, which isn't too nice either. Now as the church changes over time, they could have just left it there. He's drowned, God's justice, blah blah. But no. So apparently Bishop Henry's last wish was for Lally's remains to be tied to an oxen, and wherever that oxen stopped, the first church of Finland would be founded. This could be seen as Bishop Henry forgiving him and giving him this great honour, but it really just seems like he's rubbing it in his face, even in death. So anyway, Sweden began to gain control over Finland, but Novgorod, which is essentially Russia, also wanted it. So they began to fight. Fast forward to 1323 and the first borders were drawn. Karelia to the east went to Russia, where they began to spread Orthodox Russian beliefs, and the rest of Finland went to Sweden, where they continued to spread Catholicism. Then in 1527, the Swedish king Gustav adopted Lutheranism, which is a movement based around a German guy called Martin Luther, which basically involves translating Bibles into different languages. So around this point we get the first works published in Finnish. Swedish was the official language of Finland at the time, despite the majority of the population speaking Finnish. Gustav also tried to expand into Russian territories, but wasn't really very successful, and most of the new settlements there were burnt to the ground. Sweden held Finland and land beyond it for quite a while, but in 1710, when King Karl XII was away fighting another war, Russia made their move and invaded. Between 1714 and 1721, Russia occupied Finland and destroyed a lot of it, which wasn't very nice. This period is known as the Greater Wrath. In 1721, the Treaty of Uusikaupunki brought peace and split Finland between Sweden and Russia. Sweden wasn't too pleased about this, and in 1741-43 they attacked Russia, but failed. So Russia decided to occupy Finland again. This is known as the Lesser Wrath. Sweden and Russia continued to fight like this until 1809, when Russia completely gained Finland. Finland became an autonomous Grand Duchy and got its own senate, which is nice. In 1812, Russia moved the capital to Helsinki because Turku had been too close to Sweden. It was around this time that Finnish nationalism had started to become a thing. A man called R. Radisson is quoted as saying, "Swedish we are not, Russian we will not become, so let us be Finns." He was advised to move to Sweden shortly after. Being part of Russia, Finland fought in the Crimean War in the 1850s, and so joined the long list of countries to be attacked by Britain. In 1905, the Finnish parliament Eduskunta was introduced, which was a unicameral parliament, meaning it was the only parliamentary chamber used. This brought with it equal political rights for women, which is pretty great. Finland was actually the first European country to do so. Despite all this, rule under Russia was still seen to be pretty rubbish. In 1917, the Communist Revolution began in Russia. Finland declared independence, and the Soviets were like, yeah, cool. But a large number of working class Finnish people wanted a similar socialist revolution in Finland. The Russians then armed these people, and so civil war began. Those who wanted Finland to follow in the footsteps of Russia were known as the Finnish Reds. The government troops, known as the Whites, wanted Finland to become a monarch-type society like that of Germany. With support from the Germans, who would much rather Finland became a monarchy, the Whites ended up on top. The Finnish parliament then elected Frederick Karl as King of Finland, but a month later the German monarchy collapsed after their loss in World War I. So Finland were like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Poor Frederick didn't even make it to Finland before he decided he might as well renounce the throne. Instead, President Stadler was elected. This led to more civil wars between the Reds and the Whites. Other than that though, things were going alright for Finland. They're the only country that actually managed to pay off their debts to the US. Then in 1940, Helsinki was chosen to host the Olympics, but just Finland's luck, World War II broke out. Finland had to wait till 1952 to actually host them. This brings us on to World War II, which was essentially 3 different wars for Finland. In 1939, the Soviet Union invaded, starting the Winter War. As you can guess, this happened over a winter. It lasted about 3 months and ended in Finland losing about 10% of its land to Russia. Finland did have this one marksman fighting for them in the Winter War. He was nicknamed White Death because he covered himself entirely in snow and had 505 confirmed sniper kills. Now after the Winter War, Finland were pretty worried about Russia invading again, so they turned to Nazi Germany for some help. The Nazis decided to give Finland a hand and move troops into eastern Finland. Then in 1941, war broke out between Germany and Russia. This war was called the Constitution War and went on until 1944 when Finland made an armistice with Russia. But there were still all these Germans in Finland that didn't really want to leave, so the Finns had to fight them off, starting the Lapland War. They managed to get rid of the Germans by the spring of 1945, and finally had peace, but they still had a lot of debt to pay off to the Russians. After the war, Finland began to urbanise a lot. Through the Cold War times that followed, Finland managed to maintain a good relationship with both Russia and the West. This is largely credited to President Kekkonen, who was president from 1956 to 1981. A few extra facts about Finland. Every pregnant woman gets a box full of stuff, which is good. Speeding fines are determined by how much you make, which is a pretty good idea. Yeah. Apparently at some point beaver pelts were currency, but don't quote me on that. For those who like currency, before Finland had the euro, they had the marker. Also, Finland has the highest number of heavy metal bands per capita. Anyway, thanks for watching. First one of these I've done. If you have any feedback, that would be good. As long as it's actual feedback and not just But yeah, bye.